Hello. In the traditional motion picture story, the villains are usually defeated. The ending is a happy one. I can make no such promise for the picture you're about to watch.
Well, sure, I'd love to take off my hat. It's actually my hair, you know? I have lots of witnesses, so it is. But, hey, it's mine. It may not be pretty, but it's mine.
Both Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan had a number of things in common, including the slogan that Reagan had used to launch his 1980 presidential campaign.
Let us pledge to each other, with this great lady looking on, that we can, and so help us God, we will make America great again. Thank you very much.
And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
I think he just brings an optimism back to the United States that we haven't seen since Reagan.
Of all the presidents in the post-war era, Ronald Reagan was the one about whom the establishment in Washington, D.C. was the most apprehensive before Donald Trump. And Reagan, like Trump, was perceived as an outsider, an American nationalist, someone that didn't appreciate the world. So in that sense, the two of them were the two figures, I think, who became president, who were the most feared by the national establishment.
Reagan and Trump were at the age of 70, the oldest ever U.S. presidents to be elected.
No one knew that better than Democratic challenger Walter Mondale.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience. There was once upon a time that to be a Republican in this area of the country felt a bit like being Gary Cooper in High Noon, outnumbered in a big way. But I remember the story of a fellow who was running for office as a Republican, and he was in a rural area and that wasn't known to be Republican, and he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning. And when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped and he said, "Wait right here till I go get Ma. She's never seen a Republican before." So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which to give his speech, and the only thing he could find was a pile of that stuff that Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave his speech. And at the end of it, the farmer said, "That's the first time I ever heard a Republican speech." And the candidate said, "That's the first time I've ever given a Republican speech from a Democratic platform."
Brave, but in a kind of a low-budget fashion, you know.
New York City. And in this town, the sky's the limit. Believe me, I know.
Donald Trump was rather less low budget.
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm the largest developer in New York. I built a lot of buildings, but I also own golf courses, resorts.
He was a billionaire property tycoon who hosted a reality TV show.
I even have a television show. I am officially running for President of the United States.
The Donald finally announced he was running for the presidency after 30 years of hinting he would, and the severest doubts were raised about his fitness for office, just as had happened with Ronald Reagan. I made a film about Reagan when he ran for president in 1980. He'd served for 8 years as governor of California, America's largest state. But he was still widely seen as a trigger-happy cowboy.
I hope it's not a Greek tragedy.
I questioned Reagan at a rare press conference.
Governor, from the BBC in London, do you have any doubts about your ability to play the role of America's leading man?
Do I have any doubts about my ability to play the role of leading man in America? I've never thought of it that way. I left that profession. I have confidence, based on my experience as governor, that I can offer a better solution to the problems than either of the men who are running against me.
Reagan's campaign meetings are expensively stage-managed spectaculars made for the television cameras.
I would like to take the lead in taking government off the backs of the American people and turning you loose to do what I know you can do. Thank you.
For his supporters, Reagan was the strong man America needed to stand up to the Soviet Union and its other enemies abroad. For his opponents, Reagan was a warmonger who threatened to attack the Iranian Ayatollahs who'd taken Americans hostage. The 50 US diplomats and citizens had been held hostage for over a year.
Do you really think Iranian terrorists would have taken Americans hostage if Ronald Reagan were president? Do you really think the Russians would have invaded Afghanistan if Ronald Reagan were president? Do you really think third-rate military dictators would laugh at America and burn our flag in contempt if Ronald Reagan were president?
As with Trump, the prospect of Ronald Reagan in the White House powerfully divided opinion on both sides of the Atlantic.
From the day that Reagan won the election, the metropolitan liberal elite, the media elite, they condescended to him, they laughed at him. In fact, at no point during the 8 years did they ever concede that there might be a decent point that Reagan had to make.
I was afraid, and I think, you know, most of my friends, we were afraid. How could a B-movie actor be suddenly going to be ruler of the world? Fear, his finger on the button, doddery, vague. Would he have any idea what he was doing?
Donald Trump will go to Washington tomorrow as a political virgin, having never before held any public office. He keeps in his own office a picture of his hero Ronald Reagan, who had himself been much maligned as a dangerous maverick. So, does Reagan's record in the White House offer clues about how the new president, Donald J. Trump, will perform?
Ronnie was the outsider, and he was a huge success. Trump, in some ways, is an even bigger outsider than Ronnie was. And yet, I feel pretty bullish. I feel pretty optimistic for what he's going to do.
Donald Trump is even more frightening than Reagan. He seems wilder, he seems more cavalier. He may end up being impeached within a very short period, within a very short time of his inauguration. On the other hand, it may end in tears for the rest of the world if he is willing to pick fights with anybody, anywhere, and his finger is on the nuclear button. God help us all.
They say in Washington that it's the job of every new administration to make the previous administration look good. And that won't be hard for Trump to do, I don't think.
Easily offended and affronted, and one way or another, one of them will rub the other one up the wrong way. It seems that Putin may well have all sorts of blackmailable material against Trump.
The notorious leaked dossier, with its lurid allegations of Donald Trump watching Russian prostitutes urinate on a bed in a Moscow hotel, and any tapes of the so-called Golden Shower, would provide the Kremlin with classic blackmail material, if the story is true.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen. It was a group of opponents that got together, sick people, and they put that crap together. Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Little pencil neck Adam Schiff. He's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen. He is not a long ball hitter. But I saw him today. Well, we don't really know. There could still have been some Russia collusion. Sick, sick. These are sick people. And there has to be accountability because it's all lies, and they know it's lies. They know it.